We're going to give Senator Reid an opportunity before the panel gets up on the stage that will follow him to speak. He has to get back to the Hill very quickly. He has a vote coming up. He will be introduced by Carmel Martin, who I know, there she is, she's here, who is the Executive Vice President for Policy at the Center for American Progress. Many of you know Carmel and the important role she has played in federal policy in many ways over many years. Now at the Center for American Progress, but previously at the Department of Education as Senator Kennedy's right-hand person on the Help Committee, as the Deputy Staff Director, there for many years. You may not know that early in her career, she also worked as a trial attorney in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. And this issue of resource equity is near and dear to her heart. And she will be introducing Senator Reid and then moderating the panel that follows. Thank you, Carmel.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for that great introduction and for having us all here today. This is a terrific gathering. The topic for us that we've asked Senator Reid to speak to and that the panel will speak to is, put simply, money matters. Something that should be intuitive, but I think in the context of education reform, we've had to build the case for. Luckily, we have some new research that proves the point, looking at school finance reforms from the 1970s and 1980s. A new study, for example, from the National Bureau of Economic Research demonstrated the immediate effect of higher spending on student outcomes. For low-income students who spent elementary, middle, and high school in districts that increased spending by 20%, graduation rates rose by 23 points. And that impact was also seen in outcomes later in life, including high school graduation, earning a living wage, and avoiding poverty in adulthood. But as I'm sure Senator Reid has had to deal with in Congress over my career, I've often heard from the other folks on the other side of this issue that if money matters so much, why is it that the United States spends more per student than any other country in the world, but yet does not have the best outcomes as measured by international assessments or graduation rates? But I think there's a lot of really good data to push back on that assertion as well. According to a 2013 report by the OECD, only Israel, Turkey, and the United States spend less money on their disadvantaged students than on other students. So I think that kind of gets the crux of the matter that we're trying to deal with today, which is not only do we need equitable funding, but we need to define equity as spending more, not less, on high poverty and high need students. There has been no greater advocate for this than our speaker, Senator Jack Reed, who has some forthcoming legislation on resource accountability and equity. But he's been a long time champion for this issue. As a former Help Committee staffer, I saw firsthand his leadership on this issue and on all issues related to ensuring equal educational opportunity in the United States. We appreciate Senator Reid's efforts to move America past funding formulas and ensure that all students, especially those in greatest need, have fair and equitable access to resources such as high-quality teachers, rigorous standards in curriculum, and school facilities. Senator Reid has worked across these issues. He's led on everything from early literacy initiatives to supporting teachers through better professional development to being one of the lead champions on access to college through student aid initiatives like the Pell Grants and need-based aid formulas. Just last year, Senator Reid introduced the Family Engagement and Education Act to ensure that students are able to partner closely with parents and engage them in the work of their local schools. This legislation builds upon Senator Reid's successful efforts to strengthen and boost parental involvement in schools. He's also been a strong advocate for preschool education and has fought for Head Start and other initiatives to help build effective after-school programs. And as I said, has been one of the lead champions, which he exercise just this morning with the vote on student loan refinancing efforts, a lead champion in terms of keeping the cost of college down and making college more affordable for all Americans. So we're lucky to have him here today. Yes. And I want to ask you to join me in welcoming him.
I bet after that introduction you thought I was a lot taller. Sorry. Thank you, Carmel. That's great. It's tough following Wade Henderson. I'm sorry. Forgive me, but you've put me at a great disadvantage, Wade. You always do. So good to see you here. I want to particularly recognize Randy Weingarten and Dennis Van Rokel and everyone that's participating here. This is a critical subject, not just for the individual progress of Americans, but for our place in the world, literally. And it's so important to have you here today. I want to particularly recognize Linda Dalla Hammond. We've been stealing her ideas for about 20 years. I mean, blatantly, unabashedly, and thanks to the Stanford Center for Opportunity, Policy, and Education. But we first met many years ago when we were working on the health community, looking for the real expert, and you've never disappointed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Linda. Please. We have to move towards equity and excellence, and I would argue you can't have one without the other. And that's what we're about. We are facing a challenge in this country of inequality. And it not only is an economic issue, it goes to the fiber of this country. We always thought that the next generation would do better, that they would be empowered by education to rise above what their parents had accomplished. And now there's great self-doubt. Can we do that? Can we keep that dream alive? And the engine that's going to pull us forward, as it always has been, is going to be education. But we have to make it work for equity and for excellence. We're seeing disparities starting at birth and getting wide and wider as people progress. And in the old days, at least the hope was it didn't matter where you were born, you had a chance to go as high as you could. And that's what we want to rekindle. And we've got more than 1 in 5 school-age children who are living in families in poverty. We can't afford to tolerate this. We have to make sure that there are opportunities for these young people who are literally our future. And we have to hold ourselves accountable for results. We can't simply nod and assume everybody is just fine and average. We have to hold ourselves accountable, and that's a lot of this conference. And there's some examples of where we do have accountability. Interesting enough, Title IX. You can have equal, supposedly, programs in athletics for women and men, but if the women have old uniforms, no facility is really to train, they might have a team, but you're not complying with Title IX. But shift into other subjects, and you can have rundown schools, no libraries, everything else, and you're fine, because we're just coping with the minimum. We're not demanding true equity and true excellence. And we know that resources matter. Carmel cited the statistics. Northwest University and UC Berkeley found that increasing per pupil spending by 20% for low-income students over the course of their K-12 schooling results in greater high school completion, higher levels of education attainment, increased lifetime earnings, and reduced adult poverty. They've confirmed what we know in our gut. You look around, and in those wealthy school districts that are spending per capita much more than their children, they have other factors, parental involvement, everything else, but the resources count, and they're typically doing much better. So if we make this investment in poor children, we know it'll pay off. We just have to make the investment. And our system of public education should be about investing enough in every child and laying the foundation for a successful, productive life. And we have to rethink now beyond No Child Left Behind. But when we do that rethinking, we have to constantly remind ourselves resources matters. It's not intentions, it's not structural changes, it's not this or that. Without the resources, it's very difficult to fulfill our obligation to these young people. And that's why we've introduced legislation which we call the Core Opportunity for Resources for Equity and Excellence Act. Whew. Well, trust me, the acronym's great, CORE. Just remember CORE, C-O-R-E, okay? So, we know we need it. The Office of Civil Rights just issued a report, and it's obvious to so many in this room. Black, Latino, American Indian, Native Alaskan students, and English learners attend schools with higher concentrations of inexperienced teachers. That's what nationwide, 1 in 5 high school lacks a school counselor. And I can guarantee most of those 1 in 5 schools are in the poorest communities, not the richest communities. Between 10 and 25% of high schools across the nation do not offer more than one of the core courses in the typical sequence of high school math and science, such as Algebra 1 and 2, geometry, biology, and chemistry. The CORE Act will require state accountability plans of how they're going to fill these resource gaps, and district report cards to include measures on how well the states are providing these core resources. And I repeat myself. Now, and what are some of these resources? Well, obviously, high-quality instructional teams, including licensed and profession-ready teachers, principals, school librarians, counselors, and education support staff. Rigorous academic standards and curricula that lead to college and career readiness for high school graduation. Equitable and structurally appropriate class sizes. Up-to-date instructional materials, technology, computers, supplies. Effective school library programs. School facilities and technology, including physical facilities. You know, we ask children, we tell education is the most important thing in your life, then we send them into a building that looks like it was gutted, and of course the mall is beautiful. And trust me, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they get it. What's important? The mall, not the school. And you go into to school systems where the buildings are well maintained, where there's a difference. So it goes to every aspect of education. And we also have to engage families. We know that. Teaching is not simply the teacher in the classroom, it's the whole community, but particularly the parents. I know, I'm the father of a 7-year-old, I'm trying to get her to like math. It's very difficult, but I have to do my bit too. And we've got to go ahead and particularly understand, as Wade has said, as Carmel said, as Linda has said, that when you get into disadvantaged communities, the odds are really stacked against these kids for many, many reasons. And perhaps the one chance we have is in that school. And if we don't take it, if we don't reinforce it, if we don't put a lot of pressure and power behind it, then we're essentially giving up on these children. And we can't give up on them. And we haven't in the past. I don't think we can start now. So thank you for your work. We're going to work hard to get this legislation through. We're going to get hard to have the resources, not just the rhetoric, but the resources. The rhetoric comes pretty easy, really easy, but the resources are hard. And we've got to first, and that's what we hope we do with this legislation, shine a light. You know, where do we stand? Where's this district and where's this state? They can talk big and talk tough, but are they really putting resources in? Do they have buildings that are well maintained? Do they have highly qualified teachers in their most challenging schools, not in their best systems, but in their most challenging schools? So thank you for what you do, and I look forward to working with all of you to get not only this legislation passed, but to keep our promise to the next generation, but more importantly, our promise to those people that sacrificed a lot for us, got us here. You know, we've got to do the same going forward. Thank you.